Hi there, this is Paige with Stamp Girl here on YouTube, and welcome to my channel. In this video I want to share with you the cards I made for the Fab 4 Crafting Tools collab. In this collab we're trying to pull out our dies, punches, embossing folders, stencils or masks, and put them to use. Some of these products might be new and we haven't used them very much or at all, and some of the products we might have had in our stash for a while, and it's time to pull them out again and give them some use. So for my cards this time I used 3 of the 4 tools. I used this punch from Stampin' Up! Called the Double Oval Punch. On one card I just used the single oval, and on another card I used both. I used some dies, and those came from Arrange a Wreath set. And I keep the dies inside the same case with the stamps when they fit. So I used this one in 2 different colors of cardstock, and then I used this one in a 3rd color of cardstock. And then also from this set I used the Merry Christmas stamp. I wasn't intending to make Christmas cards, but that's just kind of how it turned out when I was done with both of my cards. Another stamp that I used is Nature's Beauty, and I used this deer right here. Now let me stop and say that these cards were inspired by a friend on YouTube, Ink with Heather. She also has a Facebook group, and it was on her a Facebook Live that I watched her make a couple of cards. Totally inspired me to pull out my masks and make some cards, and I ended up, pretty much casing what she had done very closely. So speaking of masks, I use these 2 masks from Stampin' Up! Let's see. Sorry about that. So one is this tree line here, and then the other one is also one that she used in her cards, is the brick. And then to go along with that, I used this embossing paste from Stampin' Up! And you can tell by the label that I've had this for a long time. When I first opened it, I saw a tip from somebody, I don't recall who it was to put a piece of plastic, like saran wrap. I think I just used a part of a plastic bag, and then put the lid on. Now mine was still a little bit dry, but I just added some distilled water and stirred it up with the little knife that I use, and it was good to go. I used a couple of older papers from my stash. I used this Mercury Glass Designer Acetate. It's silver on both sides, and actually one side has a clear film that you need to peel back and remove before you add it to your card. I've got a little corner started here, so you can see you peel that back before you use it on your card. But anyway, and then this paper is from Stampin' Up! Also, and it's quite old. It's called Year of Cheer Specialty Designer paper, and the patterns had a white background, and then the designs were done in copper, silver, and I think some were even done in gold. But I pulled out this piece right here, and what I did is I layered the acetate onto the designer paper on my cards, so you really can't see this big leafy design, but you see a little bit of color through the clear parts of the mercury glass. So that turned out really neat. So before I show you the cards, I used a couple more things to embellish. I used these copper star designer elements, and then I also used my favorite trim from Stampin' Up!, which is this copper trim. And one thing I find so fun and fascinating is you can pull it apart and make it look like mesh. Give it a cute little wiggle. And then if you don't like that look, you can just pull the end again, and it straightens right back out. So let me show you the cards that I made. This one was the one that mostly resembled the card that Heather had made on her Facebook Live. So I've got a white card base. I have a layer of that designer paper. And then I have a layer of the mercury glass acetate. Now it was on the acetate that I used the mask and the embossing paste. And then when it was dry, I just layered everything together and added it to the card front. The deer is popped up and the snowbank is popped up with foam tape. The deer I colored in with Stampin' Up! Blends, and it didn't have a die to go with it. And I'm not always really good about fussy cutting around an image, so what I did is I took the stamp, placed it over the image, and traced around the edge of the stamp, because you know the stamps are often larger than the image itself. So, and I liked the shape that I got. So then this snowbank is actually the scrap from when I cut out the deer from one of the, probably this side right here. And so I just laid it horizontally and used it as a snowbank. And then I went over the snowbank with a Wink of Stella pen. And then here's the Merry Christmas and the double oval punch. So then for the inside, I just have a square of, or a rectangle of white cardstock and a scrap of the mercury glass acetate. Excuse me. Now Heather also did another card using the brick mask, and so I did that as well. And again, I started with a white card base and a layer of this paper. Excuse me. I used the mask on the acetate again with the embossing paste, let it dry, layered it together. This is where I used the dies from the Arrange a Wreath stamp set. I've got a copper leafy wreath, and I've got the silver kind of berry looking leaf, and then the white leaves for the three, and then I just layered them together. And then here's where I used the copper trim. I kind of flared out the edges a little bit. And then here's where I used the stars. I thought the wreath needed something, but not anything big and bold. So I just added some stars every so often. And then here's the double oval punch. The scalloped one is done in silver cardstock, and then this is done in white, and then another star to embellish. So then on the inside of this one, I just used a scrap of the designer paper. So those are my two cards inspired by Heather. Again, thank you, Heather, for the inspiration and for the Fab 4 collaboration. Down below I'll leave a link to all the participants in this collaboration so you can check out their projects for this month. I'd like to thank you for joining me, and now I'm off to create.